My name is Jim Ellis, and I was John Snyder's roommate in college, and we've been friends for forever. When I left, when John and I graduated and he went to law school, I decided that being a classical clarinet player had no chance. So I sort of put off doing anything. I had always been a professional musician in some way. I've been making money playing music for a very, very long time, and starting in junior high, and all through high school, all through college. So I knew I could play, and I knew I could make a little money doing something. But I don't know what I'm going to do. Go to grad school, perhaps. So my dad was living on St. Simons, which is where I grew up. St. Simons Island, Georgia, and I went down just to hang out. I'd put myself through college, and I was, just going to hang out. Well, I hadn't been there but about 2 weeks when a band called and said, "We heard you were here, and come and play in Tampa." We're in Tampa, and we're touring the South, and it was people I had played with in high school, and they had not gone to college. They had continued to be a band, and with a few changes and a name change, but it was the same people and all the same contacts. And they had contacts all across North Florida and up here in Atlanta, and they had an agent and a booking guy, and so they said, "Jimmy, come buy an organ and come play keyboard and sax." So I got a little imitation Hammond portable thing and an amplifier and a Fender Rhodes. I got a Fender Rhodes, and I already had all the woodwind stuff, and I went to work with these guys and touring, and it was good money, and it was fun, and I simply wasn't thinking any further than that for a while, because it was the first year out of school, and I didn't have any, I don't know why I wasn't worried, but I wasn't. And so we played up here in Atlanta as well, and somebody heard us, an engineer who was wanting to become a producer. This is the way things happen in the music business. Goes to find artists, right? And so he hears us play a couple of original tunes in addition to the cover songs we all did. And he said, "Y'all come in and demo those tunes." Okay. So the studio that we came into and where he worked was owned by Lowry Music, which is a huge, huge publishing, and then at least it was, here in town. And lots of country songs, all the Billy Joe Royal things, all the Joe South things, all the everything. So, and things I don't know anything about now, but that's what they were doing then. And the Atlanta Rhythm section, which had Champagne Jam, big hits, were recording in the daytime. Okay, and I was recording. We were out there at night in the free time. Nobody wanted to record, so we were demoing, and I got to know the guys in the overlap. Well, they found out that I could write for strings, okay, and started hiring me to hum to. Okay, hey, look, you have no idea. Yeah. So when they saw that they could hum to me and I would get it, what they wanted, and expand on that a little bit, without going too far or without being jazzy and this was Southern rock and roll and mainstream rock and roll and pop, pop tunes and ballads and stuff. And write a string chart for a ballad. Anyway, so that got me in the door. That was like, okay, you can do, well, why are you here? Play some piano, or why, you know what I mean? And so I got to know those guys, and through that, I was introduced to a singing duo that was also recording at what was it called? I can't remember. Doraville. And that's what they're talking, Studio One. That's what they're talking about in the song Doraville, was that little studio where we were all recording. So that singing duo was my wife's future wife, okay, and her sister. And they were big-time jingle singers, in addition to having a one-record contract with Columbia or Capitol or somebody, okay? But they had had a hit with a commercial, all right? My One and Only Diamond Ring, okay? And it became an actual, the top 100 Billboard song, all right? So they were recording and doing jingles, and they said, "You're too good. Come talk to the jingle people," right? And so, boom, there that starts. And so they started hiring me to do strings and then play piano and then arrange the whole thing where they wouldn't just hum to me, they would sing to me. Okay, this is how the new Diet Coke job goes. Okay, and the guy would say, yeah, and I would, and so now I'm really in. Okay, and we begin to do really solid jingle work there. In the meantime, out at Studio One, now remember I said that about I had a skill, because that's something I want to talk about later. The percentage of skilled musicians that are part of the current music scene is smaller than it ever has been. So anyone who has good technique in addition to talent, in addition to musical understanding, is way ahead, as long as you don't let the technique interfere with the music, if you understand what I'm saying. But to have it, to enhance the music, vastly, vastly superior, okay? And a rare product. So the people that do come around, I can't tell you how few people write many of the same things that go on in the hip-hop industry particularly, and that sort of thing. A talented and skilled musician is they're becoming harder to find. So I highly recommend people who are going to enter the music industry to acquire as much technique as you possibly can. Be as good at it as you possibly can be, because that's one of the things. I'll take a little time now to say one other thing, and that is knowing what music is about is, and being a great player or a great writer or arranger, orchestrator, whatever it is that you do, is enormously important. But it pales in comparison with how important it is who you know, okay? Contacts are everything in this business, and it has to do with everything from who the next baritone sax player is going to be, to who do we hire to write this music, who do we get to produce. It's all about who knows whom and how comfortable they are with working with those people. Now, I will go on to talk about when you go into the music business, and I'll talk about learning music in a minute. I'll talk about the way that I view how music is internalized by people and then put back out as new music, how to enhance that process. But right now I want to talk about how to make money, okay? Because as much as we all went into this because we loved it, and that's absolutely the truth, you cannot just live that way. That's not enough. Learning music is not enough to make a living in the music business. You have to realize, now if learning music is enough, then fine, you don't need to know this. And you just want to play, and if people hire you, fine, and if people want to listen to you, fine, or you'll get a day job, you know? But if you want to pay the mortgage, if you want to send your kids to school, okay, or even afford kids at all, you know, you need to think of yourself as a tiny business, all right? Exactly that way. The same way as any business markets, so do you. The most important thing about it is identifying what you do and who pays for it. Okay, so you'll say, if you're going into the market, don't just go into a market and say, yeah, I'm a musician and I do these other things and so forth. Say what you do exactly, all right? Also, another thing, be prepared to say things like this. My name is Jim Ellis. I started a long time ago working for Mary Tyler Moore. I did music for WKRP in Cincinnati, Buffalo Bill with Dabney Coleman. I did National Diet Coca-Cola ads for years. I've had 2 songs played in the Olympic Games, 4 shows on the Discovery Channel. Be prepared to say things like that. Be prepared to say exactly who you are in the minimum amount of time, in some sort of professional way, okay? Don't look like you just woke up either, if that's possible. But what you want to do is say, all right, if I'm a player, who hires players? And so you identify contractors and you identify bands. You look in the thing and look for where the people with the money is. You don't just appear. You go and introduce yourself to people. And there's a story that goes along with this. It's, I'll think of his name, Peter Stroud. Have you ever seen, it's a story I called, And So They Hired Peter, okay? And have you ever seen Sheryl Crow? Okay, as you're viewing Sheryl Crow, to her right is a tall, thin guy with long blonde hair who plays guitar and who plays all the slide things and who's her lead player. That's Peter Stroud, okay? He's from here. Now, about 20 years ago, okay, Peter was my guy. He would come in and play, and he was from here, and he was just starting out, and he was killer, and still is killer, but, you know. And one day he came in and said, and he would go out with opening bands, and, you know, and he was a good traveler, and he could do all that, you know, I mean, he could play. And so he came in and said, I'm moving to Los Angeles. And I said, well, do you have, you know, who you're playing with? And he said, I don't know. And I said, are you kidding me? He said, no, but I met the people with Sheryl Crow, and I'm going to go hang out with them. Okay? And so they helped him get work and so forth and so on. And when the job of guitar player opened up, did they have auditions? Sheryl Crow could have anybody in America play guitar for her. Anybody. Okay? And all the money in the world, whatever, she could have anybody. But they gave the job to Peter. Of course, because there he was, and he was qualified to do the job. So being qualified, like I said before, hugely important. But being there and having them know your name, they can't hire you if they don't know you, and it doesn't matter how good you are if they don't know you. So identify your market. If it is if you want to do studio work, find out who the producers are. Find out where the studio work is. Who hires these people? Go there and say, hello, my name is Jim Ellis. I did you know, and do that. But it has to do with identifying who, and web pages are now a big deal. It's simple. I use my web page for like a sample book, okay? I'll say all of those things I just said, right? And then if you need to know any more, go to my website, jimellismusic.com. So anyway, so that's how I got going. I identified these people as being the ones who had the work. I went and presented myself to those people, learning all around me who those people were. The woman who became my wife told me the jingle people were down here. These other people said, you know, there's a guy from Florida, his name is Kent Lavoie, who was performing as Lobo, me and you and a dog named Boo, and they're looking for a guy. Well, I show up, they don't even have auditions. I know who you are, here's the job, okay? And, but I showed up, okay? I found out that was available. I worked hard to find, you know, to talk to people and say, who's up, what's happening, here's my phone number. It's 1,000 times easier with email than, you know, but in the old days it was, here's my card and make a list of everybody whose phone number you have and call them up every now and then, you know, because you couldn't drop them an email, you know. But enormously important. It's enormously important the further up in the business that you want to go, that you become ever more professional, that you become ever more able to fit in any situation. People can take you out in public without being embarrassed, and that, you know, you can sit in a meeting and handle yourself, you know, that sort of thing. Let me talk a little bit about how I learn things, okay? How I had the process about the music. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the business. The business is what it is. This is about the music. When I was going to music school, and I asked John about this sometime because I wonder what his experience was. But when I was going through school and taking theory, you know, 4 years of theory and composition classes and stuff, and honestly, I did not understand. And I can't imagine anybody being able to understand that at that age. And I didn't understand. I understood what they were saying to me. And I could say back that, and I could listen and understand that that's a 2 chord, okay? And that's a 5 of 5, and this is the dominant, and we go back to this key, and now we're in the fulcrum, and we moved here, and we've changed it. I understand all of that. I understand, and this is the other thing too. If about the technical side, what I was talking about, the technical side, the reason to learn theory, okay? Theory actually is not necessary to making music in any way. It is, however, necessary for talking about music and for framing it in such a way that helps you deal with it. Not just that, but then now you can talk to other people about it using terms that everybody agrees on. That's what theory is. And it's the vocabulary of music. So you really need to know that if you're going to write music or if you're going to be a good musician. I honestly think, no, I can't say that. There are people that are excellent musicians who have no idea what they're doing. And however, I don't recommend that. And it's something you can change. You can actually learn about music. So, you know, go do that. Go do that. But the theory was, and it was, the whole process was so this way, you know, it was so memorize this and try to find that. And I didn't understand what they were telling me about listening, okay? I thought I did, and I did okay at identifying things, but I didn't know what that meant. Honestly, I didn't know what it meant. It's okay. I don't think any of my peers knew what it meant either. Many of them probably still do not. Sorry. Anyway, but John does. John does. He does. Anyway, so you learn the system, right? Is learning about theory. And they're telling you to analyze this stuff, and you're going, it's too hard to hear, I don't know, my brain is killing me, you know, and you go on and you go on. And then you get out and you start to work, and some tiny portion of all of that stuff is immediately useful, okay? Some tiny portion of it, all right? But then you, as the years go by, and you try to, as I have done, increase my ability to do this, to broaden the joy. I want to be able to do. That was another thing that has made it a bit harder for me, is I wanted to do all of it. I have never picked a genre. And I wanted to know how to do all of it, everything from full orchestras to trios, okay? And I just didn't want to deny any palette. But it takes longer to become good at those things and to have them internalized, to have all of those genres so internalized that you can immediately inform yourself of something good to do that draws from that experience. But here is what I think, this is what I've distilled as the way that works for me of informing myself with music and giving myself more power musically and a bigger palette and a bigger imagination, more specific knowledge. And here's what I started to do. And I started to do this right after I started doing jingle stuff. I thought, you know, they keep asking me to do all this different stuff. I need to learn this. I need to have answers when these people come to me. So what I did was I began to collect music that I liked, that impressed me somehow. And it would be everything. Part of the Stravinsky stuff, rock and roll, pop stuff, any kind, jazz things, especially jazz chords in those days when, you know, we were still trying to figure out those voice leading things about the flat nines and the sharp fives and the, you know what I mean? We knew about them and we knew about upper structure goodies, but how does that work exactly? And people aren't asking you for that, right? They're asking you for much more mainstream things, but you're trying to learn, you're trying to add quality and learn how much of this can I do. But in any case, what I did then was I started the process, and the process becomes this: pick two pieces. All right. Now you have to get this started. Okay. So one of them already has to be listened to without trying to analyze it. Put it on, put on the music in the background, and just play it. Okay. Pay no attention to it whatsoever. Do whatever you want. Okay. Just let it play. All right. After you've done that for a while, decide you're going to analyze what thrilled you about this. Boom, here we go. Then, and I mean this part, write it down, okay? Take the piece that thrills you and listen to it and write it down, okay? All of the parts. If you can hear that that's a flute, put a flute. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just put the note down, okay? If you can hear this voicing or that one or whatever, write down as much of it as you can, okay? For the part that blows you away. Until, well, do it all, and then identify why that blew you away. Why was that good? It was good, for instance, that piece, the rockabilly piece where we went to the rock and roll part. It's a combination of like Dr. Tooth, from the Muppets, and the Guys All-Star Shoe Band, Garrison Keillor, Prairie Home. It's a combination. It's that sort of thing. But why did I pick that baritone thing? The bo-do-do-do-do. Why did I do that? Because I like that. I heard that one time and said, why is that? Why do I like that? And so I analyze it. Oh, I see. It's a baritone saxophone doing this, and then these other guys do this. Well, that gets filed away because I wrote it down. I wrote it down. Now, you can take that piece of paper and throw it away. That doesn't matter. You wrote it down. It goes into your memory when you write it down. So now I've acquired, I've listened to it already, okay, without trying. And so that music is in me, okay, whether I want it to be there or not. It's in there. What is it? I have figured out what it is that I wanted to know about this music, okay? I have written it down and I've acquired that. Well, that gets to sit in there, okay? And that little piece, well, what's the next piece? In the meantime, this other piece, when you're not listening to this one, has been playing in the background, okay? And so you simply do that all the time, all right? That's part of it. The other part is this. Learn to listen so well. I can't tell you, learning to listen is the single most important thing that anybody involved in the music business can do, is identify what you are hearing, the ability to hear through things and say, what is this that I'm listening to? What is this? I began to teach myself to hear by forcing myself to analyze songs on the radio as they play in real time, like Guitar Hero, only it's Analysis Hero. And you start with the simplest things, and I highly recommend this as an exercise. This isn't where you stop and write everything down. This is where you shout out numbers, okay? That's a 1. That was a 5 minor. Oh, dear God, a 5 minor. Back up to the 1/7. That's a 4. 4 major 7, 6, 6, minor with the 7, flat 7 with the finer bar. You know what I'm saying? And do that as the song is played. Forget it. Go to the next one. Do that until it becomes second nature for your analysis part to kick in, and you no longer have to think about it. It simply is there. there's a shape of melody that is more thrilling than others. It has to do with when does it go up and when does it come back down and go back up again, and where does it land. And the shape of that is it's slightly different for different people, but there are common things. All of the opera stuff is just so. I'm a big time opera fan, and I love the East Village Opera Company. Do you know them? The rock and roll guys, they call themselves an 18th century cover band. You got to go. They got 2 trained opera singers that can sing rock and roll, blast your face off. And everybody in the damn thing is incredible. I'm not kidding. It's New York's finest. And East Village Opera Company, got to check them out. I also recommend studying the physics of sound, okay? The actual physics of it, because that's never going to change. Synthesizers haven't changed the physics of sound, okay? They approach them in different ways, but they're the same physics. So you need to know at least the overtone series. You need to know about the frequency response, basic engineering. You really do need to know basic engineering. I have to know a lot. I engineered all that stuff too, so I've had to learn that as well. Several things. My career has opened on, when I first started doing work, I did, wrote it on score paper. We all started, when we came out, there wasn't anything else to do. You wrote all the parts out, and a copyist. People will so laugh at this. A copyist came. Yes, a copyist. And and took away the score and wrote all the little parts out in this beautiful, Dark Ages calligraphic, and people came in, then we put the parts out. All the studio guys came in, everybody, this is what it means. This is how I want you to play music. That was another thing too I want to talk about, is was something that a lot of people in this day and age don't get nearly enough of, and that is, it's a different thing to make music with people. And that's a different talent, although you need to know how to do that. And I started doing that. I mean, that's all I've ever wanted to do, was to make music with people. These audio things I played for you, as sophisticated as they sound, I would much rather have hired all of those people. But what would that have cost me? Thousands and thousands of dollars that I have no way of knowing if I can recoup a cost like that. And so the album would have cost, what, $50,000? And sure, I mean, that's an old days thing, where people just had, lots of people had $50,000, $100,000 to do an album. And of course, the whole distribution system has changed, as we well know, and the reason we're doing this. But back to engineering and the basics of sound. An incredibly important concept for mixing, for getting the kind of sound that you want. How can those things be as complex in that, and yet I hear everything? And yet, how does that work? What happens if we only have 2 people? How do you do that? And it's like this. Imagine the soundscape as a movie screen, okay? And you have 3D as a stage almost, except that you're going to have people up in the air, okay? We do the Cirque du Soleil mix, you know what I'm saying? People just track right up the wall, oh, that cymbal is up in the air. The concept is this. There's only so much space, okay? There's only so much aural space. So that when you go over to a synthesizer and you punch the little preview button and it says amplify, right? And it goes, and there's a sound big as all outdoors. And you go, well, that's incredible. That's a fabulous sound. Well, here's what I have to say. You can use that sound but you have to use it by itself. Because there won't be any room left. And if you do anything else, it'll just cover up this sound. So the point is, the more sounds you have, the more defined each of those sounds has to be in some way, in several ways, okay? One of them is in what instruments play it or what synthesizer sort of thing plays it. Another is musically, how does it fit? In other words, even though I have 1,000 people, if I go boo-da, 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 you're going to hear at least 2 different things, you know, because I got them playing at different times. See? So, and so you sculpt that so that everybody has a little space. And if they don't have any space, then they fall behind somebody else. In other words, if it's a doubling of the violin part, it may not get its own space. It may, you know, it may just blend in with that. But if you don't do that, you will never be able to hear. And other people won't be able to hear. And that is the magic thing that is happening that people had not identified to me, that I had never heard an engineer say that this is what was happening, or even an arranger say that this is what is happening. But this is what is happening. What is a successful piece of music written with a successful arrangement has space for everybody. There's a place for everybody. There's a reason for people to be there. And it neither takes, either it adds or it ain't there, you know. Another thing, line writing. Now let's talk line writing. That is huge. One of the things that was a huge advantage for me when I first started was everybody else thought of me, the people in the rock and roll bands that I was working for thought of music in terms of chords. And I thought of it in terms of lines. And it was an enormous advantage. Once I started, when I played the piano, I would play lines. And it would fit in with the other, and they go, oh, I see. I'm not a genius. I just know that I didn't play the best line in the world. I just know to play a line. You know, I know that this is more effective music when we're not all just playing chords. And it doesn't have to be me. Somebody play some lines, you know. And that's why also part of your informing things, if you're at the beginning and you're trying to learn complex music like Stravinsky, or you're trying to do those things and it's just too much, and frequently in the beginning, if you're not able to hear, the orchestration will overwhelm you and you will not be able to hear anything. You will just be impressed that the bastard's as good as he is and you won't understand anything, okay? And so the way to distill that, the way to find out what they're doing, and I didn't need to do this until I got to the romantic stuff, because I could hear what the classical things, and those are fairly simple to hear, and like I said, it's a 2-chord, you know, like that, and you know, blah 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 blah, yeah, 1 1, and so yeah, don't go to the symphony and go, that was a 1, okay, no, that's a 1, that's a minor, I just know it. Yeah, they won't like that. But anyway, so anyway, so the way to do that, the way to clarify that, it's simple. Study string quartets. Orchestration is all the same. It's as good as a piano reduction. Even Debussy has to pick. He has to decide what notes he wants to play. And in doing so, when he cannot have a harp, when he cannot have bells and glissings and all violins, when he can only have the 4 guys, what does he say? When Ravel can only have the 4 guys, what does he say? Not only will you learn a load about music, you'll learn about string writing and line writing. There's the answer, is about line writing. But, I mean, it's line writing at its finest ever. But you learn about bowing techniques. Very important if you're going to write for strings is to know the whole palette. Very important if you're going to write in general is my philosophy is to know the whole palette, okay? And only in the last 10 years or so I faked it up until about 7 years ago. I got to tell you, I just said I could. I didn't mean that. All those people I worked for, I didn't mean that. But anyway, let me say a couple of quick things about scoring. By now, if you're going to score, okay, you really do have to represent everything. I mean, you need to have the cart full when you show up and say, I can score a movie, okay? They can ask you to do anything, and you need to be able to do it the very best that has ever been heard, okay? So that's all the genres. They don't even think about, are you a rock guy? Unless they've hired you specifically to be a rock guy, and they're not going to hire me specifically to be anything. They're going to hire me to be the film guy, you know, the composer. So you show up with a full palette and ready to rock, okay? Now, the secret, as many times as you know, I mean, you play the big themes and all of that, and that's just neo-romantic movie writing or modern movie writing, which involves synthesizers and sound design, okay? Like the television shows and the you know, there's elements of acousticness and traditional orchestration, and there's elements of synthetic and sound design things and all of that. So but that's a palette, and that's something you have to learn. Plus, you got to learn all the synthesizer stuff too. Just learn. So anyway, so but most of what you will do is support emotion. And that has to do with the director will say to you what they want to happen in here. And what you have to do is elicit that emotion or that point of view or it's an emotion, let's face it, whatever it is, it's an emotion or it wouldn't be music, you know, without getting in the way. And so that requires a certain number of very specific techniques. I swear I could list them for you, okay? And it's all under the heading of going nowhere in a hurry. For instance, the Bourne stuff. Guy does a fabulous job. I can't recall his name right now, but I study his stuff. I love his stuff. And that's an example of the modern, you know, combination of orchestral and synthetic and full palette. They can do whatever he wants, you know. But you know, there's this long action sequence, and you get to the end, and you think, boy, you know, and you think, boy, you know, the music must have been incredible. And you go back, and the music is going. Just that, you know, and here's okay, and they stop for a minute, the music goes, and then, you know, and they'll go like, anything, you know, and then you're like, okay, I've been here for 30 seconds, down a step, same thing. Now you've got a whole nother minute. Right, because you changed keys. I'm not joking. This is the way this works, okay? And the whole idea is to be, in that circumstance, to be exciting without anybody ever really listening to you. And the technique of economy, the techniques of economic writing are wonderful things. It comes from that. It comes from the same school as that line writing. Where it's how can we do this? What little things can we do that are just very exciting, you know? And now you have a chance. Now you have a chance to play a sound every now and then, because we've got sound effects going on, and the sound designer guy's throwing everything he can at you. Everything's in heavy, you know, just throwing all of that. But then if there's a little place, boom, now you can put a musical sound that flows back into the action. And they don't mind that. They like that. Okay, if they've got a little pause, you can show off a little bit. But you had better get back in the closet and support all this action, because they didn't come here to see you. They came here to see, you know, Matt Damon. And also techniques of how to write beautiful music underneath without using melody. Try that. Because once you start playing melody, you can't listen to the song, you can't listen to the dialogue anymore. You can play a little, or you can play it way in the background, but you know what I mean. Melody writing, ballad writing, huge deal. The ability to write songs, songwriting, totally different thing, okay? That has to do primarily with lyrics, okay? I write lyrics as well. It's a very difficult form of poetry, and as such, gets mangled to death by, in any number of circumstances, and in these days, it's almost any human sound. But writing a good song is, if you can write a good song, you can ignore all the rest of the stuff I talked about, okay? Because you don't need to score movies. If you can write a great song and get it, that's enough. I do write songs, and I do write, but I've never had a hit song. Anything you do that brings structure to it, intellectual structure, helps, because it is such a subjective medium that any kind of help you can give to the listener about what's going on, and it helps people grasp what you're up to. Plus, it makes your job easier. The reason we have those things is to make our jobs easier. For instance, everybody talks about, you're cramping me with this form or this, I don't want to. Well, the reason people had forms was so they didn't have to worry about what it was like, no, we'll do a song form, okay, or we'll do this symphonic form, because it was convenient. What if everybody just free wrote? It would, 4 songs would have been written by now. They're still writing them, right? But anyway, what I would like to say finally, and this is as much to Johnny as anybody else. What is really worthwhile in this business is, of course, the people. And I have been blessed to work with some of the, I'm sorry, John, I'm a non-deist too. I didn't mean to say blessed. Working with just the finest people. Right out of the box, I got the Mary Tyler Moore job, okay? That was right after the Lobo album. Remember me, I said I cut that Lobo album? Well, doing that in conjunction with working with the Diet Coke people, the guy that was head of McCann Erickson, was the creative director of McCann Erickson, went to work for Mary Tyler Moore. Remember what I said about it's who you know? And so he works for her for a few years on some of her shows, and then they give him a show, and he hires us. And that's how that worked. But even so, working with the very finest people, and excellent, wonderful musicians. There is no greater thrill for me in my life, other than my wife and daughters. And Rumor, my dog. Than walking into a studio and having a room full of musicians waiting to play. That is Christmas for me. I'm working as hard as I can to get back to that situation. And it's looking really good at the moment. There are several things. I'm about to start on a very good long-term project, and we're going to have some musicians in then. I mean, even the regular budgets, you can hire a couple. But, you need a guitar player, and you need, that. But people used to have, when I first started working, it was like a jingle, $7,500, and that was in 1970, okay? They don't pay $7,500 for them now, okay? And it isn't because they are paying $15,000 either, okay? It's because they want to pay less than $5,000, And so the economics of it have gotten us in these little rooms, and I very much enjoy making music under any circumstances at all. And I think I do pretty well to be jammed in this little room. But that's not what I want to do, and that's not what I'm going to do the rest of my life either. I'm going to get back to where the 12 people are sitting in the room. or more. And we can count this buddy off and start.